From the Oklahoman newsroom, this is an NCAA tournament update. I'm Jenny Carlson here with a couple members of our college basketball coverage team, Oklahoma beat writer Ryan Aber, columnist Barry Trammell. Guys, it's Monday morning, and I think we're all still a little bit in shock with what we saw Sunday night at the Peak. We got to talk about Oklahoma in a second. We will, but we saw the biggest last-minute comeback in the history of college basketball between Texas A&M and Northern Iowa. You still wrapping your brain around it, Ryan?
I am, because I'm trying to pay attention, trying to finish my OU story and process that, them getting to the Sweet 16 and sort of pay attention to this, and then in the last minute you just can't look away. It's absolutely stunning what they were able to do. Like you said, the biggest comeback in the final minute in NCAA history, and it happened here in Oklahoma City just a couple days after we had one of the greatest finishes in NCAA tournament history.
Barry, why is the NCAA just not saying, Oklahoma City, you get a regional every year? When's that coming?
Oh, well, probably when we sell all our tickets to all these great games. But I can tell you, Bobby Hebert, it wouldn't have helped if you'd been concentrating on the game. You still can't get your arms around it. Because I was sitting there focused completely on the game, and I still couldn't believe what I saw. A total team meltdown. You're talking about a team that does everything well, fundamentally sound, played flawless basketball, dominated the game, up 12 with literally 35 seconds left. A&M down 12. A&M misses a shot. The comeback started with a follow shot.
Right off the missed three-pointer? Yeah,
so the guy misses a shot with 35 seconds left in the game. You think the game's over. Guy gets a follow shot, and then down the hill it goes.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. Still can't get my arms around it. But the good news is somebody's going to make a documentary about it. ESPN 30 for 30, surely. We're going to be well-versed on what we saw last night eventually.
The picture that came out of that buzzer beater on Friday when Mouse were Gabe, I think it was a little different Sunday because you couldn't, it wasn't a bolt of lightning, it was just continual, and you couldn't hardly believe what you were seeing.
It was a car wreck in slow motion is what it was.
It was.
And here's the deal. You celebrated Paul Jesperson's half-court shot in Northern Iowa on Friday night. In fact, I think you're stepping on toes when you talk about the jaws dropping because
it was you,
apparently
Barry.
I went viral. However, last night was not that. I mean, you didn't really celebrate so much. I mean, A&M celebrated, and good for them. But for everybody else, you felt worse for Northern Iowa because you almost couldn't look at. You almost couldn't look at it. You had to look away. It was just awful. The post-game press conference was the worst I've ever been in terms of just feeling bad. Those guys sat up there and handled it well. But I mean, everybody, if you're not one of those guys arm in arm singing
Saw Varsity's
horns off, everybody else in America is just crestfallen for Northern Iowa.
Right. Well, now, guys, Texas A&M, the miracle makers, if you will, they're facing the Sooners in the Sweet 16. They head to Anaheim to play that game. You know, I think people have started to try to think about, well, how does OU match up with Northern Iowa? Where are the strengths and weaknesses there? Now you've got to readjust and get your mind around A&M. Ryan, what kind of matchup is this for the Sooners?
Well, I think you've got to start with House for A&M. We talked about it last night. Northern Iowa did a great job on House. I think that can be a bit of a template for Oklahoma and what they do against the Aggies. But House was able to get free a little bit late in that game, helped them get to that point, and obviously was a big help in overtime.
What's interesting is Washburn, the little guy for Northern Iowa, guarded House most of the game. He fouled out. Washburn fouled out early the first overtime, and that's when House took over. So I don't know if does that mean OU puts Jordan Woodard? He's OU's little guy. Does he get right up on
that
House?
Jordan Woodard would be the guy. Woodard has been fantastic defensively over the last month or two, and would think there's a good shot that Woodard will be matched up on him, although Isaiah Cousins has also been a very effective defender as well.
Barry, I have to think that the way Oklahoma comes out of their first two games, everybody has to be keeping an eye on these guys. We saw Buddy Hield heat up in a way that, I mean, it's one of the great stretches of individual performance we've seen in an NCAA tournament game. 26, the Sooners' last 31 points. He finishes with 36 points. I mean, isn't everybody all eyes on Buddy as this team moves forward?
Well, yeah, and I thought the Sooners fixed a lot of problems here in Oklahoma City. You know, going back to Kansas City, that West Virginia game, the Sooners didn't play well. They put the clamps on Buddy, ended poorly for the Sooners. But in 2 games here, they were stretched by both Bakersfield and Virginia Commonwealth, but they answered the bell both times. I think we saw Ryan Spangler have a little bit of a revival. We saw Kadeem Latin sort of not foul. VCU coach Will Wade said something very interesting yesterday. He said, if Kadeem Latin stays on the floor, everybody wanted to talk about Buddy Hield. Will Wade wanted to talk about Kadeem Latin. If Kadeem Latin stays on the floor, the VCU coach said, this team can win the national championship. So I like the way Oklahoma's playing going into the Sweet 16.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you mentioned the West Virginia's press that gave Oklahoma so many problems in Kansas City. Well, both teams that they saw this weekend tried to do that at times. VCU just did it a couple times, but every time it seemed like Oklahoma was able to break out of that and get things going in transition, which is when they're their most effective.
Yeah, turnovers were way down. We saw 10 in the first round game. I think maybe the number yesterday was 12.
12, I think.
I mean, you're going to have some turnovers because VCU was getting after them pretty good, but still, I thought they definitely took better care of the ball. Guys, before we go, let's look big picture. The Big 12 went into this NCAA tournament talking about best in the country. Well, we get to the Sweet 16, 3 Big 12 teams, not bad, but 6 ACC teams, guys. Is this ACC against the world, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to say right now the ACC is the best conference in the country, the deepest, with the way that the Big 12 struggled in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament and the way that the ACC really responded. Now, we'll see what happens moving forward because with Kansas and Oklahoma, 2 teams who have a really good shot at making it to Houston. And then Iowa State also, it'll be interesting to see. We thought this team was going to be really good going into the year. They had some struggles. They don't have any depth at all, but what they do have is one of the most dynamic players in college basketball with George Niang, and he creates so much mismatch problems. That Niang, Malcolm Brogdon, Iowa State-Virginia matchup will be one of the most fun of the Sweet 16.
And remember, the winner of that game gets to play a double-digit seed in the Elite Eight with a chance to go to the Final Four. So if Iowa State can handle Virginia and their defense, they've got a shot to make the Final Four. Barry, how many ACC teams do we see in the Elite Eight in your mind?
Oh, I haven't figured it up. Also, I think they got a shot at half. 3 out of the 8. When you expand your conference, which the ACC's now got 15 schools for crying out loud playing basketball. 6 out of 15 is a great number, but it's not astronomical.
Should we be less impressed by it because of that?
That's 40% of their teams. The Big 12's got 30%, so it's not a huge discrepancy.
Yeah.
While as the Big 10, 3 out of 14, that's 22%. So, the Big 12's not done as well as we think they should have, and as well as they think they should have. However, when you expand your conference to 15 schools, all of them virtually basketball schools, you're going to see some years when things come together and you got 5 or 6 teams in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, and I think it's probably going to be about 3 or 4. I think Notre Dame's got a good shot to get past Wisconsin, although Wisconsin's playing some really good ball right now. North Carolina and Virginia. And then Oregon and Duke. I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup with Duke, with Grayson Allen. They're playing so much better right now than they were a couple months ago. I think they've got a good shot at maybe being the first one to knock off a #1 seed.
If Duke and Oklahoma end up in the Elite Eight, you'll have the most loved player in college basketball against the most hated player in college basketball. That'd be a fun matchup.
And some guy named Capel on the bench.
That's right. Jeff Capel will also be on the bench for that game. Hey, lots of fun. The Sooners roll to California. These guys will be heading that way too. Game time on Thursday about 6:30, 6:20?
Yeah, 6:27.
All right.
Oklahoma time.
Yeah.
Oklahoma time.
Set your watches, 6:27 Thursday night. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.